He's been regular guest on the program, but now Ken has been doing such a great job for us, and many of you have been writing in, liking what he has to say in terms of the educational value and so on. And I'm talking about Kenneth Bombace. He's the CEO of Global Threat Solutions, Security Consulting, Protection Services, and Intelligence. He has offices not only in L.A., but in New York also. He's a former Army intelligence captain that led counterinsurgency operations in Samarra, Iraq. He's a retired criminal intelligence detective, also a professor of criminal justice at Farmingdale. He served in Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall, which is exactly what we've been talking about in mentioning the death of Mikhail Gorbachev. But Ken is going to be with us regularly once a week. Again, one of our regular contributors. Happy to have him aboard. Ken, happy to have you on board, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on. And you're right, there's a lot going on right now, specifically the death of Mikhail Gorbachev, which is pretty relevant in these times right now with what we see happening in Ukraine.
Now, you were there, during the fall of the Berlin Wall, because that was all part of it. That was all part of the glasnost and the whole idea of an opening of new relations between East and West and the releasing of the Soviet republics into independent sovereign nations with a belief in democracy and human rights and so on. Give us a little bit of a flavor of what that was all about.
So it was an interesting time, Tom. Having served as an infantry team leader in Germany, I was in Mainz, West Germany. My orders were to West Germany, and just 2 years later, I came home from Germany. And this topic's of special interest to me, obviously. So in 1988, as an 18-year-old, my orders were to Mainz. And just 2 years later, we came home from a reunified Germany. The Cold War was, I'll tell you, Tom, it was a challenging time, and it was even, as we could both have lived through this, it was a scary time in America's history. But I'll tell you something, after having experienced now and lived through 9/11, the attacks of 9/11 and the war on terror, there's been more than one time in my life where I've said I missed the Cold War, because although the stakes were so very high during the Cold War, and there was a sense of an underlying stability back then, because I think both sides, they knew the impact of a mistake and acted with like a sense of caution. Something were misinterpreted, or if one side felt threatened, it could have devastating results, obviously. And it required a steady hand on both sides of the Cold War. And I think Mikhail Gorbachev actually was that hand on the other side. And as I was listening to your show leading up to this, he was a man ahead of his time, I think. He was it was almost a revolutionary ideas that he had in the Soviet Union at that time. He led to what we now know as a thawing of the Cold War.
Yeah. And I think that not too many times in history do we get that singular individual that had the vision of peace or was the right person in the right moment in that point in history. I mean, I'm a believer in history. I used to teach history, and I can go back and talk about so many different eras there that I find just absolutely. I believe Abraham Lincoln was one of those people. I believe Winston Churchill was one of those people. We don't have a whole lot of them throughout history, and I believe Mikhail Gorbachev took it upon his belief in a new, what I always call a golden age of peace, which we had the opportunity for. But as you said, that when we saw the planes hitting the World Trade Center, it was a new type of threat that was out there. And that's essentially what we live under, that sword of Damocles today. But he is certainly somebody to be noted and to be talked about today on talk shows and radio shows throughout the world. And I'm hoping a lot of people doing that. And where it's not really happening is in the Russian Federation. Why do you think that is, Ken? They're not really talking about Mikhail Gorbachev the way we are.
No, they're not. Well, I wouldn't, there's a portion that are not, and I think there's some that appreciate what he did. Yeah. But most importantly, because their leader, Vladimir Putin, he saw that, it was one of the worst events in the last century. He made a statement that said that during the speech. That's how he felt about it. It wasn't something that he supported. So his mission in life has been pretty much to return the glory of the former Soviet Union to the Russian Federation right now, and that's what we're seeing play out right now in Ukraine. So it's really a shame that Mikhail Gorbachev died during seeing what his work has become. I know, let's face it, the Russian Federation had lots of issues, like many countries do, but this most recent part of their history since they invaded Ukraine. This is, something that I'm sure he wasn't happy with, Mikhail Gorbachev, after seeing the transformation that he did in 1990, to see this happen and trying to essentially, let's face it, it's already a form of a Cold War right now. Yeah. We're in an arms race in Ukraine, and this is all of the work that was done, the important work, even for people like myself that served in the Cold War. It was such a feeling of satisfaction, right? It was like the Cold War that went on for 50 years. It was like we got to spike the ball. We saw the wall came down, the Soviet Union broke up, and there was freedom. It was really a victory, and no other sense, and no other way to explain that, but a great victory. And now we're seeing that being torn apart. Eastern Europe, violence like we haven't seen since World War II. And like you mentioned before, he developed these policies of perestroika and glasnost, which is, these theories of restructuring and openness in the 80s. This is something that would be, that prior to him in the Soviet Union would be unheard of. He actually allowed people to publish articles criticizing him. Now, that's nothing here in the U.S., but in the Soviet Union at the time, that was a big deal. Yeah. So he was kind of a man ahead of his time and led them to this thawing that ended the Soviet Union and gave freedom to millions of people in Europe.
Again, just listening and talking about this is, you get kind of wistful, so to speak, that this portion of history and that history, what happens in history affects what happens today. And a lot of people don't want to pay attention to the past. And I believe many of our elected officials, particularly our president, should have that knowledge. And sometimes I fear that our presidents and people in national power don't understand where we've come from. And I think it is so important that talking about Gorbachev is incredible because of the significance of what we're seeing today with the suffering of the Ukrainian people and what's taking place over there and the amount of money that the United States is giving to the Ukraine. And you almost wish that didn't happen and that Putin would have followed the line, because he was right in there, but he saw an opportunity. He basically has taken over the country. They don't have the freedoms that they had under Boris Yeltsin. They don't have those at all, and we don't know where this is going to go. And you're right. There are people that are remembering Mikhail Gorbachev in a very, very positive way, and I think that's important to mention that. And I'm glad you did. And as far as what the fear was, I can remember there was an incident in the early 80s where a Russian commander nearly did launch a nuclear strike against the United States because they got some bad information. I think it was around 83, 84, because they feared Ronald Reagan because of his evil empire statement. I don't know if you remember that, but we came very close of an accidental Holocaust. Okay?
Yeah. Ronald Reagan was someone, even now, and I'm a huge fan, but you look back at what he never gave them an inch. He called them out for exactly what they were. He never gave them an inch and constantly made calls for freedom. And I wish we had that today, where we tiptoe, we tread so lightly because we don't want to anger people like Vladimir Putin, and we don't want to anger China. I wish that we had that courage, that strength that Reagan had. Well, we have to call you can't give them an inch, because it only leads to what we see right now.
Yeah, and
at a time when we have a Russian leader who wildly threatens the U.S. and the West with a nuclear attack, it's easy to miss a guy like Mikhail Gorbachev. And Putin, on the other hand, famously, he said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. And that tells you a lot, like you said, looking at history. That's why we are where we are, and why we're there now. Right now is because they saw in my opinion, the weakness we displayed in the exit of Afghanistan. Putin's a very calculated guy. He's been waiting. We all know he wanted to move into Ukraine for years now, and he saw this as his opportunity, and he took it.
Yeah, he saw what happened a year ago.
War.
It was almost a year ago in Afghanistan. He saw that was a mess. Yourself, as a former military guy who I'll call you a true blue patriot, to watch what we did over there and give away all that equipment to them and basically leave tails between our legs. And that's really what happened. And then the 13 beautiful American men and women who lost their lives over there. For what? For what do we ask? I mean, I'm talking about in the last part of it. You know, one may answer the question in terms of the entire theater that took place over there. So, and I think that has given our enemies to be somewhat bolden, and we're seeing that right now. Let's go on to other topics and subjects, things that you're very close to, not just on the international scene and things that you've done in our military, but also on law enforcement stage. You know, we have a president that ran around and talked about police violence, a phrase that I reject, and I've always rejected that phrase, police violence. The president, Joe Biden, uses it quite a bit. We have systematic racism in our criminal justice system, all of that nonsense, never looking at the evolution of policing in America and our major cities and towns and counties throughout all this. I don't know where this planet this guy is orbiting from. And now all of a sudden, lo and behold, he wants to refund the police. He wants to help the police after he has been denigrating them as a result of his strings being pulled by the far left radicals who hate cops. I mean, I don't know how else to say this. Put some sort of sensibility into this. What is this man thinking? And I'm talking about President Joe Biden.
Right. So, Tom, I watched the president's speech yesterday in Pennsylvania. And it appears to me that he and the Democratic Party have finally realized they need to try and repair their image from the defund the police movement and the general anti-police movement that we've seen from the left since 2020. And at one point in his speech, he said something like, how could anyone support January 6th and say they're pro-police? How could anyone support insurrection and be pro-police? And obviously I don't know anyone that supports what happened on January 6th. No. But again, Tom, it's the hypocrisy. People aren't stupid. They saw how so many Democrats across the country supported the riots following the death of George Floyd. What happened really dwarfs January 6th in scope and intensity and in every way. We had billions of dollars of destruction. 12 police officers, I believe it was, were murdered. An anti-police movement that our country is suffering from still today, right now. We weren't all asleep then, Tom. We saw what happened, and the Democrats and now all of a sudden they want to be pro-police. They created this crisis that we have. They created this crisis where police, we can't even get them to take the job anymore. And we have them retiring early and leaving in greater numbers than ever in history. It's that simple. They're trying to remove themselves from that stigma right now. And I don't think it's going to be that easy. America was watching. This wasn't, we weren't all asleep when that happened. So, you know what this is? Make sense of it. Focus groups told him, hey, you need to be more pro-police because the midterms are coming. That's it. It's nothing to do with his beliefs, and it's nothing to do with the beliefs of the other people behind him in the Democratic Party. It has to do with focus groups saying you guys are really going to get hurt on the police issue.
Well, I think the damage has been done to Democratic office holders, and I've always said this: there's a wing of the Democratic Party that has taken over that party, and I could say that pretty definitively. They are the ones with the defund movement. They're the ones with the bail reform that you see in other states too. It's not just New York that has been afflicted by letting career criminals out on the streets on a regular basis, not considering dangerousness and so on. We all know the story with all of this. And then, of course, I believe what you just said, very much so. The focus groups and the polling has shown they can't win on this issue. But I think it's a dollar short and whatever. What's that phrase? Dollar short or way too late or whatever. They're way too late on this. Yeah, the American people, I think, have spoken. You're going to see that happening here on Long Island, the upstate New York. Maybe there'll be sections of the city that are still going to stay because they do believe that criminals should be given better rights than the average citizen, that if you are a victim of a violent crime, well, it's probably because of the social nature of the problems of our criminal element or whatever they want to say, that the people are just deprived. So that's why they're beating people on the streets and doing smash and grabs and all that other stuff. And I think that I think the American people are going to see that, and you're going to see that in the November elections. So whether this initiative that this president is taking right now, whether it's going to have an effect, are they going to be able to turn it around? I don't think so. Ken, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think so. And we didn't even get into the other Democratic policies that really have hurt law enforcement, cashless bail, the things we're seeing police officers, not even assaults on citizens, assaults on police officers, and the people walk out the next day. This isn't going to go away quick. These are all Democratic policies, every single one of them. And, Tom, I'm sure you could relate to this. Having worked in law enforcement a long time, it seems like cops, like most people, they would vote. They have their political beliefs. In my opinion, I think most police officers tend to lean more conservative. But they would vote, in my history in law enforcement, they would vote sometimes for their job, whoever best supports their job, and more specifically their wallet, right? And you can't blame them for that. Everybody does that. If there's issues that affect you, you would vote. Your union endorses someone and you back them. But I'll tell you what, it's different now. Now it's much more personal. This is not, well, the union gave me this list of endorsements. Unions can endorse whoever they want now. Most police officers that I know, they will simply not vote Democrat. Not now. Not with the issues at stake. Not with bail reform. Not with defund the police movement. Not backing police officers. Right now, I think that has changed. Police, they could endorse whoever they want with unions, and I think that's changed too.
Yes.
I think you've seen those endorsements go more to the right. I've seen a lot of that now because of what's happened, and I think that I don't think this is going to be enough. There's definitely not enough time at the midterms for them to change anyone's mind about law enforcement and their stand on it.
Yeah, and I have said that there is a greatness of the history of the Democratic Party, but it has been lost, and it has been lost in the last few years with an embracing of a philosophy that does not represent the American people in so many different ways, and that's a tragedy, and it's a blight on the American political system because we only have two political parties. So now a big part of the responsibility, at least this year, and we saw it last year also, is on the Republican Party to take up the mantle of the forgotten middle class and of safety and security and supporting our police officers and the way difficult job that they have. Again, very important that we consider that, and maybe someday the Democratic Party is going to find its way, but it has lost its way right now. It's in the dark portion of the woods, whether they're ever going to get out of it or so on. Just a few minutes left. It goes so quick with you. The DOJ threw out some pictures today to the press of documents laying on a floor. I guess they threw them on the floor and took pictures as part of the search warrant that took place at Mar-a-Lago, and some of them had said top secret, super top secret. I know you know this stuff. What was your impression by seeing these documents laid out like that and pictures taken?
Yeah, I think it's something that you would never see in any other cases. I think it's purely for the media, and it just shows you how this investigation, this case, this raid stands out from the norm, and things that I don't think, it's like they're trying to sway public opinion, not work towards a case. Why would they have released those at this stage in a criminal investigation? And, Tom, I don't think many people would say, wow, Trump shouldn't have taken those documents, right? What was he thinking? Why did he bring those there? It's not really the point. What where people are dealing with right now is hypocrisy. It's the tremendous hypocrisy. That's what people can't take. Everybody thinks, why did he do that? Why did he not? But I'll tell you what, the hypocrisy is that, this was still a compound under Secret Service protection, a presidential compound. And meanwhile, they're talking about the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, doing this assessment. What could have happened if anybody got these documents, which they didn't. And at least we think that nobody has distributed any of that information. What would have happened? Where was the DNI assessment for Hillary Clinton? With 32,000 emails, many of them with classified information here, top secret information in there. Where was the DNI assessment? Because I'll tell you, as an intelligence professional and everyone I've read about in the field, they're confident that information has already been obtained by our enemy. Confident. It was essentially like a Yahoo account that she was keeping national secrets on. I mean, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that information has already been acquired by our enemies. Yeah. So where was the DNI assessment for that? That's what I think really hurts this case. It hurts the image of the DOJ, is the wild hypocrisy we're seeing. Why is this being handled this way and that wasn't handled? Where was the raid back then? And back then, they're talking about possible obstruction, right? In this case.
Yes.
Well, my God, we know there was obstruction in that case with the bleach pit. We know there was. There was textbook obstruction in that case. And then Comey came out and said, but no reasonable prosecutor would have tried that case. That's what people see is the injustice of hypocrisy, and that's what angers people. And that's why this is getting so much attention across the country right now.
Now it is. 10 seconds left. Were those cover sheets legitimate in your mind? Is that what a cover sheet looks like on something like that?
Yeah, I've seen cover sheets like that. I think those are legitimate. I don't know what's behind them or where they found them and how much more information was there, and if they could have taken them in June when they got the other ones.
Right.
I don't know any of that. None of us do.
This is it's a whole fascinating case, and we'll be talking quite a bit about it. Once again, Ken Bombace, regular on the show now every Wednesday, 12:35. One of our new contributors. Ken, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again next week, my friend.